Estamos solos, millones de polo, al son de un solo coro, marcharemos con el tono, con la convicción que basta de robo, tu estado de control, tu trono podrido de oro, tu política y tu riqueza y tu tesoro, no, la hora sonó, no permitiremos más tu doctrina del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó. No hay países, solo corporaciones. ¿Quién tiene más acciones? Trozos gordos, poderosos, decisiones por muy pocos. Constitución pinochetista, derecho pues de hilo fascista, golpista disfrazado de un indulto elitista. Cae la gota, cae la bolsa, la toma, se toma la máquina, rota la calle, no calle, la calle se raya, la calle no calle, debate que estalla, todo lo quitan, todo lo venden, todo se lucra, la vida, la muerte, todo es negocio, como tu tonto, semilla, pascuala, método seguro. Vénenos tus monólogos, tus discursos incoloros, no ves que no estamos solos, millones de polo a polo, al son de un solo coro, marcharemos con el tono, con la convicción que basta de robo, tu estado de control, tu trono podrido de oro, tu política y tu riqueza y tu tesoro, no, la hora sonó, no permitiremos más tu doctrina del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó, del shock, la hora sonó.
Otra definitiva a la calle. Muchos oficiales reclamando al gobierno una mejor educación.
Golpe a golpe, verso a verso, con las ganas y el aliento, con cenizas, con el fuego del presente, con recuerdo, con certeza y con desgarro, con el objetivo claro, con memoria y con la historia, el futuro es ahora. Todo este tubo de ensayo, todo este laboratorio que a diario, todo este fallo, todo este económico modelo condenado de dinosaurio, todo se criminaliza, todo se justifica en la noticia, todo se quita, todo se pisa, todo se ficha y clasifica, pero tu política y tu táctica, tu típica risa y ética, tu comunicado manipulado, ¿cuántos fueron los callados? Pago guanacos y lumas, pago guanacos y tunas, pago guanacos nos suman, ¿cuántos fueron los que se robaron las fortunas? Célenos tus monólogos, tus discursos incoloros, no ves que no estamos solos, millones de polo a polo, al son de un solo coro, marcharemos con el tono, con la convicción que basta de robo, tu estado de control, tu trono podrido de oro, tu política y tu riqueza y tu tesoro, no, la hora sonó, no permitiremos más tu doctrina del shock, la hora sonó, 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 la hora sonó.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bridget Todd. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the communications director for UltraViolet. And I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your day with us. We represent a movement of over 1.2 million gender justice advocates nationwide, and we are so glad to be spending a little bit of time with you today, taking a look at where we're at and what is ahead for our collective fight to build a feminist, inclusive, anti-racist future. We are so humbled to be in this work with you. I have a few logistics for you. Today's town hall call will be under an hour. We'll be recording today's event for those who are not able to attend. So now is a good time to turn off your video if you do not want your image captured. We'll be utilizing automatic captions for anyone who would benefit. And we also have two ASL interpreters joining us today, Denise and Emilio. We'll have them featured throughout the call today. And if you have any accessibility questions or need, please let us know in the chat. We also hope that you'll feel free to engage with us and each other in the chat. Please, right now, just let us know what brought you here today and where you're joining us from. I'm in Washington, D.C. We'll also be wrapping up this town hall with a Q&A session and using the chat for questions. And I have to say, I am so excited to be connecting with all of you today because it is a historic big moment. We are all about to witness history. For the first time in our nation's history, we'll see the confirmation of the first ever Black woman Supreme Court justice, a milestone that is once historic and also long overdue. And I know that we're not letting anything or anyone take away from the big joy of this moment that Black women organizers have been fighting for. So even while we're hearing about some of the work that we know is ahead of us, I want to continue to use that joy as a lens to ground us in our conversation today. The road is long and we have a lot on the agenda. And I'm going to pass it over to my brilliant colleague, Sonia, to tell us a bit more about what I mean.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Sonia Spoo, and I'm UV's Director of Federal Coalitions and Policies. I'm based in stormy Washington, D.C., but still call Arizona home. It's where I grew up and was born and raised. I've been at UV for almost 4 years now, and I really do love these moments where I get to talk with you, our members, about the work that you frankly enable us and help us and partner with us to accomplish. I want to take a moment to talk about the Supreme Court and the larger moment we find ourselves in with the court and frankly our democracy. To echo what Bridget said, as a Black woman, as someone who was formerly working in law, I can't even begin to articulate how proud I am of this moment and the joy I feel. We have such an accomplished jurist in Judge Jackson, and to be very clear, as incredibly accomplished and qualified as she is, the president was deeply, deeply fortunate to have an incredible bench of hundreds of qualified Black women who he could pick from to put the first Black women on the court. And this is nearly 250 years overdue. So we are so happy. But the other side of that joy is a certain reality. Our country is in a democracy crisis, and the Supreme Court is unfortunately at the center of that. Thanks to the frankly diabolical efforts of Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans and former President Trump, the federal judiciary is stacked with right-wing judges and justices who have taken it as an ideological mandate to roll back the hard-fought rights we have attained in the last 70 years, whether it's voting rights, abortion rights, environmental rights, tribal rights, efforts to combat gun violence, you name it, it is all on the line this year and in the several years ahead. That is why it is so imperative that we are successful in getting jurists like Judge Jackson on the court and confirmed. It is also imperative that we work to reimagine what the court can be and how we, the people, need the court to continue to fight for our rights and ensure justice for all. I do want to note that while getting Judge Jackson in the court is historic and is critical, we do know that her confirmation will not necessarily materially change the balance of the court. That is the ideological slant of the courts. It will still be packed with extremist Trump conservatives. But we also know that her dissents tomorrow can become the court's holdings in future years, and setting that jurisprudence is critical. This is high stakes. The Supreme Court is the final arbiter of our rights, but their power only comes from their legitimacy. And frankly, that legitimacy rests with us, the people, giving them that. So part of our job in the weeks ahead, as we go into some key critical decisions coming out of the court, will be to mobilize people so the court knows that we are watching and will not let them run over our rights that we have fought for. One of the cases I want to highlight today is the Jackson Women's Health Organization case v. Dobbs. This was a Supreme Court case argued last December, and it pertains to a 15-week abortion ban out of Mississippi. Mississippi has explicitly asked the court to not only uphold the 15-week ban on abortion, but to also overturn Roe. This is the Roe challenge. The court can technically release their decision on this case anytime now, but we do expect that they will release it formally in June, at the end of June in particular. And we will be mobilizing the partners across the movement to make sure there's a huge groundswell of support for abortion rights and work to pivot to gain back any losses we may face at the court from this decision. There's also several cases relating to environmental justice and the ability, for example, for the EPA to be able to regulate water or air pollutants, and the ability for, frankly, the president to enact some environmental policy that we maybe can't get past through legislation, but traditionally the environmental agencies have had the leeway to do themselves. And we also have had cases regarding tribal rights at the court and the ways in which tribal sovereignty is under attack as well. This is all this court term. There's a lot more on the docket coming up potentially in the next couple of years too. While these cases have already been argued, again, more cases will be coming on the court, before the court, which is why we are working so hard to make sure that Judge Jackson is confirmed. But there's also the longer term work we need to do to work toward institutional reform. For example, UV has endorsed the Judiciary Act, a bill introduced in Congress that would add additional seats to the Supreme Court to help rebalance the court in the face of Trump and McConnell court packing. But that's just one part of a longer term campaign we are working on to think about how our institutions need to be re-envisioned to actually be representative of the people of this nation, whether it's abolishing the filibuster, protecting voting rights, or other reforms. We know this is a long-term project, and we're going to face a lot of crosswinds to accomplishing our goals. In the meantime, though, we've been working very hard to confirm Judge Jackson to ensure that we have at least one more fair and justice-minded jurist on the court. I will close by mentioning a particular effort we've been undertaking to defend Judge Jackson against both the horrifically sexist and racist attack she's faced, as well as the efforts by Republicans, frankly, to use survivors' trauma as political weapons. Last week, UltraViolet, with our partners across the movement, published an ad in the New York Times, which centered survivor support for Judge Jackson and our knowledge and our belief that she will stand up for our rights while on the court. I'm also going to hand it over now to my colleagues Katie and Jaya, who will talk more about our efforts to combat racist and sexist disinformation online.
Thanks, Sonia. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie, and I'm a campaign director at UltraViolet, leading our fight against disinformation and online hate and harassment. Next slide, and here's Jaya.
Hey, everyone. My name is Jaya, and I am the campaign manager. I work alongside Katie on our work around disinformation, hate, and harassment online, and I'm based on Pawtucket land, also known as Boston, Mass. Next slide.
Disinformation, which is intentionally false information that's meant to mislead people, has become a key tool used by the right to radicalize people and spread racism, misogyny, and division across social media and the world. Disinfo works hand in hand with existing cultural bias and is most often used to attack Black women, women of color, disabled people, LGBTQ people, and other marginalized communities. These attacks are meant to silence these voices and push forward right-wing ideologies. That's why it's no surprise that disinformation is being used to attack the historic nomination of Judge, soon-to-be Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Next slide.
We fought back against this hate online by helping the media, other progressive organizations, and the public learn how to prevent, spot, and stop disinfo. We brought together social justice groups from across the movement to hold President Biden accountable for his commitment to nominate a Black woman to the Supreme Court. Once Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was named, we coordinated digital campaigns to build public support and flood social media with positive messages about her experience and qualifications. Next slide. We relaunched our media guide with the endorsement of more than 70 partner organizations. Together, we called on the media to commit to fairly covering the nomination process for a new Supreme Court justice and provided tips to avoid misogyny, racism, disinfo, and stereotypes when covering Judge Jackson's nomination process. As we head towards the confirmation vote, hopefully it seems like this week, we're getting ready to celebrate and acknowledge the path paved by Black women advocates and civic organizations that led to this victory. Next slide.
So how do you know if what you're reading is disinformation? First, trust your instincts. Does it seem too over the top or outrageous to be true? Is it just trying to make you angry? If you think something is off, you're probably right. You can start by doing a reverse image Google search to look for the original source of any photos. That's where you take a photo that you found online. You might take one of these, for example, and put that image into the Google search, and it'll show you where that's found across the internet. Photos are often taken out of context or edited to make something appear real that isn't. It might be a photo from a completely different event that's being used now to look like something different. You can use fact-checking sites like PolitiFact and Snopes and check well-respected news outlets like the New York Times or the Washington Post to help you find the facts. They do a lot of fact-checking, so if they haven't found something factual about that and they haven't published anything on it, it might be because it's not true if you can't find it. You can also question the source. Is it the information you're reading from a well-researched news site with journalistic standards, or someone trying to push an agenda or sell a product? The same goes for if a family member or a friend shares something with you. Take a moment to ask where they found this content and ask yourself if that person has fact-checked it before they shared it with you. Ask yourself how the message and photos are filtered through biases against BIPOC, disabled, LGBTQ people, women, and other underrepresented groups. If you do suspect that you've come across disinformation, don't reshare it, even if it's to debunk it. It can be really tempting on your Facebook or Twitter or text messages to share that information with someone else and say, look how ridiculous this is. Can you believe it that someone would share this? Or to say, oh, Mitch McConnell is such a jerk. Whatever it is that you want to share by sharing that original content, you're actually just helping to spread and lift up that initial content, especially if it's on social media. Those social media sites can't tell the difference between you sharing something to debunk it versus sharing something because you like it. Instead, you can use social media tools to report that as disinformation, or post about the content without directly resharing the initial content. Next slide. Oh, maybe it's not next slide. I'm sorry. That was my fault.
Oh, no worries. It's also important to learn how to protect yourself. Keep potential bad actors out of your accounts by setting strong passwords on all of your email and social media. It may feel like a pain to do, but it will protect you in the long run. For best protection, use a two-factor authentication application or a text message as a second factor. Bad actors can try to spread disinformation by pretending to be you, but you can prevent this by claiming your name on social media platforms, even if you don't plan to use them. Be sure to pay it forward by lifting up other people who may be facing disinformation attacks and showing the bad actors that our community is united against them. So these are just a few tips to help you get started. But if you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out our mini site, feministnet.org, or follow, we're going to put into the chat a toolkit for you all to help us amplify and celebrate Judge Jackson, soon to be Justice Jackson, in the coming days. We'll be taking lessons learned from our campaign around Disinfo, SCOTUS, and confirming Justice Jackson, to our Disinfo work this fall ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. But for now, I'll hand it over to Shauna.
Come off mute. Hi, everybody. Want to just thank you again personally for joining us. I want to also take a moment to thank my amazing colleagues who spoke before me and the ones who worked hard behind the scenes to put this town hall together. The impact we make and the audiences we reach would not be possible without them or without you. Excuse me. Though, we have faced many challenges. The intensity of backlash on the right to the power we've built as a gender justice movement, just, a significant number of obstacles I know that all of you are deeply aware of. We have a lot of reasons to also celebrate how far we have come as a movement. 2020 is also just an important year for UltraViolet as an organization. It marks the 10th anniversary for UltraViolet since we launched. That's 10 years of creating a cost for sexism, 10 years of changing the incentives people and institutions have for undermining women and LGBTQ people, 10 years of creating cultural and political space for policies and laws that can generate equity. It's 10 years of, I think, really bold and cutting edge organizing that pushes the envelope and has real impact. And we are just getting started. This work would not be possible without the support or participation from our 1.2 million members across the country. This community is always ready to take action, whether it's online or in the streets, calling elected officials, protesting and marching to combat sexism, racism, and misogyny. We do have a lot of things we'd like to unveil this year as a thank you to all of you who have supported us. One of those things is our 10-year celebration event in Washington, D.C. It's in September, and you will be receiving an invitation. This event is going to be open to all of our stakeholders, members, donors, supporters, and as I said, we'll extend an invitation to you all along with some allies on the Hill. There will be more information on this event and how to purchase tickets soon. So keep an eye out in your inbox and also be on the lookout for more information regarding stuff like membership swag, like shirts, pins, stickers, ways to stay engaged and involved during this important year. Building on our success has never been more crucial than now, when our democracy is at its most fragile and culture arguably at its most volatile. We are in the midst of course, a critical election year as well. We're facing unprecedented disinformation on social media, increasing attacks on abortion access, anti-LGBTQ legislation, and anti-democracy voting restrictions. Support for our work is essential, probably now more than ever. One of the campaigns to support this work that we're rolling out this year is to encourage our supporters to become monthly donors. Long-term success in our work really requires sustainable funding, which is going to help UltraViolet move from, and our whole community really move from being what it so often feels like defense to going on offense on all of our issues. With your support, we can really mobilize towards a future where gender justice isn't a lens or a narrative, but a true lived reality for everyone. With your help, we can combat disinformation and hold social media platforms and the media accountable, make the internet safer for Black women, Indigenous women, women of color, LGBTQ people. We can protect reproductive rights and hold corporations responsible for supporting anti-abortion politicians. And we can move together to create a gender just future through culture and policy change. If you are interested in supporting our work and would like to give monthly, you can click the link my colleagues are dropping in the chat. Together, we will create a home for anti-racist feminists who get it, who are fed up with waiting and compromising and want real systemic change now because we desperately need it. So thank you again for your time, for being here. I really look forward to connecting with you all, both online and hopefully in person soon. Next, I'd like to pass it to Kathy, our Growth and Membership Experience Director, to facilitate the Q&A portion.
Awesome, thank you, Shauna. So I'm super excited to be with you all today. I know we just heard a ton of information. So one of the things we thought we would do is let Q&A be in the chat. That way some folks can take a minute to think about what you say. It's also easier to understand questions, I think, in the chat. So if anyone has questions, go ahead and put them in there now. I will also say that in addition to the UV staff that spoke, that you've already heard spoke, we have a bunch of other campaigners on staff too. So if something didn't get talked about today that you're curious about, you can certainly ask anything about artwork more generally too. So feel free. I'll wait just a second to let folks get their questions in. And if folks don't have a question, I might put Sonia on the spot. Oh, here we do have a question that I'll throw to Jaya, because I think you might have been the one who mentioned it. Jaya, can you explain what claim your name on social media means?
Yeah, it's honestly as simple as just, putting your name in your bio and your handle on a platform like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. There may be a lot of people with your name, so it might seem hard to do that, but really just putting your name, like claiming your name or as much of it as you feel comfortable with. And, that can make a really big difference. I also recognize that not everyone feels comfortable or can feels comfortable or safe doing that. Social media is a very public space and things don't get deleted really from the internet. So, it is a personal choice at the end of the day, but, if you do feel comfortable doing that, I encourage you to do so, because it will enable and prevent kind of bad actors from claiming your identity or trying to claim your identity online or on social media.
Thanks, Jaya. I wanted to give a second. I think we might have gotten a couple of questions DM'd, and then I'll move on to the next one. Sonia, can you talk a little bit about what we expect around timing of the vote, and if folks are still wanting to do something to help actually get Judge Jackson confirmed, what they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. We do expect the vote to be tomorrow night. Senators have things they want to do out of town. Some of them are going to diplomatic missions. Some of them are going to Representative Young's funeral in Alaska. So we expect the vote to happen tomorrow night. There's some procedural things that are going to need to happen before then. But we are not expecting any issues with her being confirmed. To be very clear, there is bipartisan support for her. Senators Collins, Romney, and Murkowski supporting her from the GOP side. So it should go fairly smoothly. But this is the US Senate, so there is that. In terms of actions, we have call alerts, which hopefully one of my colleagues can drop into the chat. So it's always good to call your senators and just show your support for Judge Jackson, for this historic nominee. It's always hopeful that we can get any more votes coming down on the GOP side, but we are in a good place in terms of getting her confirmed numbers wise. So call alert that we are driving calls to. We've driven thousands of calls. We want to keep doing that to show our support for her. And then if you follow us on social media, we will be sharing celebratory actions happening around the country once the confirmation happens, from our partners who've been organizing, especially the lead that we're taking for Black women leaders and organizers who have been doing so much of the work to get us to this moment.
Great. And Sonia, there was another question about when we, assuming she's confirmed, when the actual swearing in would take place, given the timing for this is a little different.
Sorry. She will be sworn in. Actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure if Justice Breyer will be finishing this term. I believe he will be. And so she'll go on the court once the term is finished. But I actually am not entirely sure about that timing. So we can circle back about that.
Great. I'm sure we will let folks know, and we'll be celebrating during that moment for sure. I think I'm gonna have another question for you, Sonia, but I'm gonna give you a break real quick. We had a question about Clarence Thomas that I'm gonna ask Maria on our team to answer. As to whether or not we are gonna weigh in given the recent news about the actions of Clarence Thomas's wife.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. My name is Maria Chijov, and I'm the VP of Advocacy and Membership here at UltraViolet. I use she, her pronouns. So I think this is a really important question. You know, UltraViolet has already echoed calls from members of Congress and our allies in the progressive movement for Clarence Thomas to be removed from the court. And I think that, you know, this is one of the many reasons why we support many of the court reforms that Sonia spoke about. I think the Supreme Court has really become this politicized body. And it's really important for us to not just speak out about what happened with Clarence Thomas, with his wife, why that is not okay in a functioning democracy, but also about the many other things that through the actions of Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, the Republicans have led to this moment that we're in. So I think, yeah, the short answer is yes. And I think there's a lot more that we need to do in order to really change the tide around the Supreme Court.
Great, thank you, Maria. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Sonia. There's a question about, I know, Sonia, you mentioned the current Supreme Court cases that could impact or possibly overturn Roe v. Wade. And if you could talk a little bit about what we are working on to prep for when that decision comes down.
Yeah, actually, just to go back to the question that was asked earlier, what I signaled earlier is true. She would be joining the court at the end of this term. So Justice Breyer will start out the rest of this term, and she will join this summer. Just to note that. And in terms of mobilizing around the Roe decision, we are going to be working, of course, across our different verticals of work, including our disinformation work, our corporate accountability work, our political organizing and electoral work to respond to whatever the Supreme Court comes down with on the Jackson Women's Health Organization case. This will include organizing actions outside of corporations who funded potentially organizing actions outside the corporations who funded the politicians behind these bans at the court, working with partners to get people out in the streets for marches and other kinds of direct actions, getting people registered to vote, because we know that we also need to change the electoral calculus if we're going to have any chance of, getting back some rights or protecting abortion at the national level. So we will be rolling out actions with partners beginning in May, hopefully is our timeline, for folks to plug into and get activated on ahead of time. And then of course, we'll really begin to start to move things as we get closer to a potential decision at the end of June.
Unmute myself. Thank you so much, Sonia. We have a question about what we'll be putting together once Judge Jackson is confirmed, and if members will be able to really celebrate that. So Jaya, I'll let you talk a little bit about what we already have prepped and what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, this is an awesome question. We really want all of you to be a part of the celebration. So in terms of online celebratory content, we have a toolkit that I'm putting into the chat right now, and we'll be mailing that out to y'all after the call with graphics, tweets, Facebook posts, like all of the above that you can share in celebration of Judge Jackson. A big shout out to Luna, who's our social media manager, who created some really beautiful graphics, including that really just stunning one of Judge Jackson's daughters looking really lovingly at her mom during the hearing process. So we have all of those coming together. And I believe we have partner organizations who are coordinating a watch parties as well as the celebration in DC. But in terms of stuff that UV is leading, this toolkit is the way to go, especially if you're not, in the East Coast or if you're not in DC specifically. Please share those online and join us in celebrating, because this is a really awesome moment.
Awesome, thanks, Jaya. And I'll again plug our social media channels. Maybe we can put links to those in the thank you email as well. Definitely the first place you often will find information from us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram in particular. Okay, let's see. We've got a couple more questions and we'll probably go for just a few more minutes. Let me see. Sonia, would you like to take another question on the Supreme Court itself and ethics around recusals and other reforms that we might be able to do around the court?
Yeah, so one of the things that is not, I think, particularly well known is that the Supreme Court kind of governs itself. It is up to justices themselves and sometimes a Chief Justice to enforce it, to decide when or where it makes sense for them to recuse themselves, for example, for cases. Generally, it's assumed that justices will do the right thing and recuse themselves from where they might have conflicts of interest. We have seen that has not been the case of late with the conservative justices, including with Justice Thomas. So there has been a lot of conversation, although this hasn't really led to any kind of legislative answer about what it looks like to put more ethics on the court, if there's like a legislative pathway for that. Because as of right now, really, there isn't a whole lot of checks on the actual individual behavior of justices, besides, the off chance that they can possibly be impeached, right? But generally speaking, they govern themselves. And so there isn't a legislative vehicle for that per se yet, but there is conversation amongst many Democrats about what that looks like, and how we can better literally actually have some checks on the court than they currently have.
I think that covers all the questions we've gotten so far. I'll give just another minute in case any of those answers brought something up or anything else that folks want to go over. Okay. I have a question specifically about asking Judge Jackson about her college exam. I'm going to just pause for a second to see which of my colleagues wants to take that question. Maria, I'll let you go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And maybe you can also mention a little bit of the disinfo we saw from folks like Tucker Carlson during the hearing too, and what we've been doing around that.
Totally. So I think that this is one of the many examples that we saw from Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Marsha Blackburn during the hearings of, it's not even veiled racism and sexism. It is like full on out there racism, sexism, and really grounding their attacks in dog whistles, in assumptions about Black women that are grounded in racist thinking. I think going into the hearings with our media guide, we had some sense of what we were going to see. We know that racists have attacked Black women leaders by saying they were unqualified, by saying that they were too radical, by questioning their ability to legislate on issues or adjudicate rather on issues that were somehow seen as issues they could be biased on. And I think we saw all of that. We also saw Josh Hawley especially calling out debunked QAnon sort of fodder around the questions around pedophilia. And I think all of this just really shows us that the Republicans were not there to have a serious conversation about Judge Jackson's record and what kind of justice she'll be. They were there to talk about, to sort of showboat for their constituents or for who they perceive are their constituents. And I think we saw Tucker Carlson do the same thing. Fox News really echoing those racist, misogynist talking points. And I think it's really important, the work that UltraViolet members and other members of our coalition were doing to really push back on that and make sure that that narrative remained a fringe narrative and not the conversation. And I think we were really able to do that in a lot of ways. And I think that's thanks to the work of all the folks here and folks from organizations across the movement who came together in this moment.
All right, thanks, Maria. I see in the chat we have a question about what extent we incorporate the LGBTQIA community into our work. I know there is legislation happening in a lot of states that I think Florida is getting the most media attention right now, but Texas, Idaho, a whole bunch of different states are doing terrible legislation, primarily attacking trans kids. And I think first to answer your question, we feel it's core to our work, and we have been in contact with and specifically have done some campaigning with the folks in Texas around the bills there, as well as some fundraising for them because they are definitely currently under-resourced, and we're hoping to do more. I think one thing I'll just say that I know Sonia says sometimes is that the rights that we are seeing chipped away at in the states are indicative of what we are also expecting from the Supreme Court. And as we are seeing rights being rolled back against trans folks and abortion, they are very much connected. The same bad actors are putting forth those pieces of legislation, and we absolutely believe that we have to work together in order to stop those attacks and to keep our rights. Sorry, that was like maybe not the most coherent answer to that question, but I really, really appreciate it. I know we also had another question in the chat that was specifically around legislation and the Supreme Court. I'm going to pause for just 1 second to see if we had someone who wanted to take that one. While I wait on that, I will also say we have also been working to forward the Equality Act at the federal level that wouldn't necessarily solve all of the problems of the state level bills, but would certainly make a big difference in that landscape. Okay. I know someone had mentioned in the chat something about legislation specific to altering the Supreme Court. You can feel free to drop more about it in the chat or to reach out to us directly after the call. But I think that otherwise probably gets all the questions we had. So I just want to take another moment to thank everyone for joining today. We're hoping to do more of these this year, especially as we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary. And so we'd love to hear feedback from you all. We can include a survey in the thank you email to see what you liked about today, anything you'd want to see different topics, skills, other stuff that you would like to hear from us. And as always, we really appreciate you. So thanks so much. And Katie, I'll ask you to put our music back on as folks are filtering out.
I got pressure. She called me diamond on the weekday. Got so much pressure. That's why this song be stuck on replay. I got pressure. She called me diamond. No time for mistake. Too scared for writing. You know I dream this reality since I was a youngin'. Write down who I be and now the manifestation's coming in. Now why you acting like what? Now why you acting like that? Put your thoughts into the universe and she gon' bring it right back. You so hard on yourself, mama, you don't need that. No, you your biggest critic, girl. Best believe that. Best believe that. Best believe that. 'Cause why? I needed to hear that. Am I overthinking will be the death of me? Am I pointless stressing won't be the remedy for my motivation that I feel I need?